now, Mr. Serling.
Next week on the Twilight Zone, we put you on a front porch. Summer evening, tree-lined street, typical small town. And then we pull the rug out from under your feet. And we throw a nightmare at you. Claude Akins, Jack Weston, and Barry Atwater are your neighbors just at that moment when the monsters are due on Maple Street. Don't chicken out. See you next week.
So smooth.
I love it.
Dude, he was staring into my soul at the end of that.
Yeah, no. I appreciate the amount of, like, restraint here, where half the time it's just him talking, and it's like, guess what? He knows he can sell you. He knows.
I'm going to be honest, like, I'm more listening to, he's got such a soothing tone of voice that's just entering my soul, and I'm not really getting the words, I'm just hearing pure Serling. Like, I'm getting my Serling hit to the brain, and it's releasing dopamine, it's good.
I'm glad I've hooked you guys, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, we're in there.
I'm discovering my new
I'm
I'm
really glad to revisit this. Actually, my mom was over today, and we were chatting, and I was telling her what I was doing with the Twilight Zone reviews, and she's like, yeah, we used to watch that when you were a little kid, and I was like, yeah, and she was talking about a few of the episodes she remembers. I may actually have her on board to watch these. So.
Oh wow!
Wow!
It'll be fun.
Well, that's kind of the cool thing about doing something that is such a cultural, like, touchstone and artifact is that everyone knows Twilight Zone. Like, even if you haven't watched it, you know the references, you know the storylines, you know the kind of the tone and the weirdness. Like, it is kind of like Star Trek in that respect, where it's like it's so ingrained in the pop culture consciousness, despite the fact that it's not been nearly as overexposed as something like Star Trek or Doctor Who or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so no props, no background. I'm taking 4 points off right off the bat. Not a compelling teaser, Rod.
No rock.
No, you know what?
No cigarette.
I'm gonna go exactly the opposite. I'm gonna go for a pre-rating of 8 because usually when he doesn't require a prop, when it's just him talking to you directly to the camera, that means he's got confidence.
And how smooth was he to just walk on? He just walked on and like, I'm going to tell you all about this, and then that's it. That's all you need.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. It's like, I mean, obviously you've told me that there are crappy episodes of The Twilight Zone, but I don't know. I trust Mr. Serling. I think that if he's got confidence in a product, I have confidence in a product.
Serling
More than that, no cigarette. Which means that he doesn't need the crutch here. What am I going to say about this stinker?
You guys are so full of it, you know that.
I think I echo Stars' confidence. I feel like I'm going to go with a pre-rating of a 7. I feel like we're into something magical here. Also, Otto's picked it, and he said it's not a bad one, so that's also an indicator that it might be something.
Sure.
All right, I'm actually going to be. I'm gonna pre-rate this 6 rods out of 10.
Ooh.
And I'm expecting you guys to talk me up a little bit because I don't love this episode, but it's supposed to be a little more hard-hitting version of the last one we watched, Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up? So let's get stuck in.
Dan?
I'm in for it. Let's
Well,
go. Oh yeah,
I'm going to rate it a little higher just because of Claude Akins. I always appreciate his work, and so yeah, we're gonna bump it up to a 7. But yeah. Ready to go.
Yeah, 6, 7, 7s. Yeah,
That's good.
We're all optimistic. I'm liking it.
I wanted to ban you guys from pre-rating 7s because that's like the easy safe.
I didn't. I went for an 8. I said it with confidence.
Okay,
7.1.
There, I'll take that.
Well, on behalf of all the 7s,
7.089.
I'd like to accept my award for the most well-known rating in all of history. Let's watch the episode.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Holodeck, our journey through things that are not Trek and some things that are close to Trek. And this week we are continuing our journey through the Twilight Zone with the episode The Monsters Are Here on Maple... No, was that The Monsters Are on Maple Street?
Due on
Maple Street.
All right,
They're around.
start it again.
Start it again. No, we're not going to start it again. We're going to carry on.
We're in the vicinity of Maple Street. Yes.
One to the other. We're going to carry on with these episodes. We're going to carry on. Otto, why did you pick this episode for us? What drew this to your pantheon of classics to show to us?
So I initially didn't pick this episode. This is, and I've been using the word classic a lot because I wanted the first 6-7 to be like the most well-known classic Twilight Zone episodes, and this is. If you look up discussions or polls online of which episodes are everyone's favorite, this is almost always in the top 3, sometimes the top 1. People like this episode. I don't love it, and so I didn't include it, in this particular watch. And then I watched it again recently, and we get to the part where, what's his name, Charlie, shoots the guy with a shotgun. I'm like, all right, this might be jumping the shark. But then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, no, actually, that's extraordinarily relevant. You go on, go Google like a guy shoots teenager for ringing the wrong doorbell or something. You'll find a dozen different hits. It doesn't take much to get the mob mentality stirred up. And I have, reservations about certain parts of this episode, but the message is undoubtedly timeless. And that great epilogue by Rod Serling about, that can't be confined to the Twilight Zone is a nice bit of narrative, of narration. So.
Yeah, I mean, this episode is, it delves into, paranoia, albeit it takes up to about 500% with how very quickly people are shouting accusations at each other, but you've got 20 minutes, you need to get there soon enough. And this definitely, while it seems a bit excessive and a bit like over the top, like why people are making these mad conclusions, there is a part of me that thinks, actually, no, there are people and cultures and things on this planet, not just America, but there are definitely, people will be the first to pick up the brick and cast the first stone in this world. That there are fables towards it, so it's not entirely uncommon.
The watch order for the Holodeck series here in the previous episode we had viewed, which is, will the real Martian please stand up? Spoiler alert for those of you who have not watched it, there is a Martian and they are real and they're here. The Venusians also, but in this case, it's as if Rod Serling has kind of almost evolved. And I had been a little down on the Martian stand-up episode. I thought it was a little pulpy, and right off the bat, in the very first act of this, we get a reference to pulp comics and aliens invading from the little greaser kid down the street from To the Exposition. And so it's like right up front, Rod Serling is winking to the audience and say, hey, yeah, get set, because we know what you're thinking and it's not that. So and then it took us to a great place too. The fact that we actually do have Martians, but they're not who we think we are, is a great resolution. We'll get to that in a second. Stars, what do you got for me on this episode?
So I'm kind of just thinking about it, and I'm wondering if this is, because it's a very specific setting. This is American suburbia, and obviously there's a degree of, well, it's easy to film in American suburbia. You literally just go down the street from wherever the lot was, and you just pick a good filming location, you go, right? But I'm also wondering just like how much of it's meant to be a universal commentary on people, or if it is meant to be a very specific thought on, especially what 1950s and 60s American suburbia was like. Because there is such a particular culture in play, especially in America, and especially at that time of, the man's house is his castle, and of every of a particular. I know exactly who lives on my street. I know, their kids go to the same school as mine. That kind of insularity.
Yeah, small town syndrome.
Obviously, that's not unique. Yeah, it's not unique to American suburbia, obviously.
But you've also got, this is in the middle of the red. This is 1960s, the middle of the Red Peril, isn't it? You've got the commies on the border. You need to know who your neighbours are. Are they a spy? And it kind of reflects little sort of like echoes of that kind of political feeling. Otto and Dan, as the resident Americans, please tell us if us dirty Brits are wrong.
This is the neighborhood watch on Un-American Activities. This is like the small-scale McCarthyism thing. Yeah. So this was a Rod Serling story. He wrote 92 of the 156. And what I really love most about Rod's stories is they're as deep as you want them to be. If we could die, we could probably do 3 hours on all the tendrils this casts out and the stories that it tells. Or you could just think, they kind of escalated fast. It's a little silly. I know what they were going for. So I do like that, he sets the story, but then he kind of lets you take it as deep as you want. And so far in the series, I think we have with a lot of these episodes.
I want to mention the pacing on this. So Serling really is a masterful writer of teleplays in particular. So he's got the 2-act completely down pat, but also keeping you interested and on the hook when the mob finally reveals itself, and we've got them shifting their focus and blaming each other, and things have reached a fever pitch. And then he knows to interrupt it and take a beat and calm down a little bit, and have the Jack Van Horn, I guess, come loping back up the street with his hammer hanging down his pants. Great visual, by the way, of showing that everybody's got their weapon when push comes to shove.
I kind of like that shot in general of just like you hear the footsteps first, the footsteps come, and you just hear everyone's reactions. It's slowly, it reminds me of kind of like the shadow shot. We get that nice little masterful pan. You're in, it's probably not anything threatening. It's just going to be someone walk up the street, but you've got enough suspense that they kind of hook you along. And you're like, I need, someone's like, oh, can you help me with this? No, I just need to see the end of this scene. I just need to see what it is. And it was good. Definitely hooked me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, like that's easily the strongest visual of the entire episode. Like obviously, like there are some decently strong, some mise en scène, I believe is the title, and like good blocking and good use of strong visual imagery. But that's what's going to stick in your brain. It's just the slow, and good sound design as well. Like you have to give them props for letting just pin drop, footstep.
And it kind of contrasts with everyone going nuts at the end and the pure absolute chaos of glass smashing, people screaming, and it's contrast to two paranoids.
Well, they also, because it's shot very differently from the rest of the episode. Where like for the majority of the episode, you have a lot of intense close-ups on people's faces, a lot of kind of monologuing, really, and dialogues, where it's just a case of like you don't get a ton of things where you can't see people's faces, which is what that scene is meant to intend. You can't see Pete Van Horn, R.I.P. You just see him from the leg down, and you see the crowd in the distance as just this homogenous mass. They are intentionally dehumanizing both sides of this to emphasize the fact that it's no longer about the individuals. It's no longer about the people who make up the mob. It is about the individual versus the mob. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It could have been anyone walking up that street, and it would not have mattered. And that's kind of very, very well communicated in that shot. Like, guess what? That's what good cinematography is. It says everything without having to say a goddamn word.
I've got
talking about the cinematography, the fact that it was the entire episode was shot in exterior. It may not have been on, I don't think they actually had a real street. I'm not sure. I didn't see a whole lot of skylines or clouds. It was probably a soundstage, but they still managed to evoke a claustrophobia to getting all the extreme close-ups of people's faces, especially when tensions were high. Despite the fact that everyone's out in the open the entire episode.
I've got a fun fact and a quiz for all of you except Otto, who wrote this. Tommy's actor.
I want to participate, man.
Tommy's actor, Jan Hanslick. You might know him from something else. What might you know him from?
Oh, God.
Oh, he was the voice actor for Bart Simpson, wasn't he?
Not correct. No, he does play a good old woman, but that's not that way. No, I'll give you the answer. Actually, you probably won't know him.
He's one of the greasers in West Side Story, right?
No, he actually only had 3 film credits and dropped out of acting to become a trial lawyer. So yeah, you wouldn't know him from anything. This is his big thing.
Oh,
okay.
What kind of asshole came up with this quiz?
And can you tell me another film reference, one we've mentioned before? What was something? I'll give you half the clue here. The uniforms and the spaceship ramp and the shot of the flying spaceship are used in which other film? Another reused shot.
Davey Oster Still?
No.
Forbidden Planet? I think we've mentioned
Correct,
that
yes.
before.
Forbidden Planet, 1956, yes.
Nice.
They're both used from that. Anyway, carry on.
I knew it was going to be one of those two, because those are the only two we've mentioned so far.
I want to talk about Rod a little bit. First, I'm going to read from an interview, a 2018 interview with Jan Hanslick, a.k.a. Tommy, who said, I have a very vivid memory of Rod Serling. He came to the readings. I remember sitting around a conference table, and Mr. Serling was sitting pretty close to me as we ran through the lines. He changed a couple things as we went along. From my perspective at that age, he seemed like a pretty serious guy. Even when we were reading our lines, Rod was there. It was pretty clear that there was a message being sent. Almost every Twilight Zone has a message, some sort of moral point it was making. In my episode, it was right off the page. I gave you guys some homework. I know Dan completed his assignment, turned it in on time. I don't know if you two watched it. There was an interview that took place, I think, just a couple months before Twilight Zone aired. They had about 20 stories written at this point. And so the interviewer was asking Rod about censorship. He said, is there pre-censorship involved? Or are you just writing easy to get stuff by the censors? Rod said, quote, in this particular area, no, because we're dealing with a half-hour show which cannot probe like a 90, which doesn't use scripts as vehicles of social criticism. These are strictly for entertainment. Fucking liar.
Yeah,
These
I was
are
gonna say.
very adult,
Yeah.
very adult, half-hour, extremely polished films. But because they deal in the area of fantasy and imagination and sci-fi, there's no opportunity to cop a plea or chop an axe. Which sounds very Gene Roddenberry in terms of trying to get the heavy stuff by the censors. And so they do a 2003 remake of this episode in a remade Twilight Zone series. And instead of aliens, it's the army kind of experimenting on them.
Yeah.
And instead of thinking everyone's the alien, they think, oh, it's the terrorists are here to try to destroy our neighborhood
That time's very
community.
2003, yeah.
Yeah. And this does it better because sci-fi and fantasy gives you that extra degree of separation that lets you buy in and let you believe in the narrative before the story clicks and you realize what they're going for. And I think that's what Rod understood, which a lot of the Twilight Zone's been remade a lot of times and it's always fallen flat. You can't even remake Rod, let alone increase on the original Twilight Zone, I don't think. But he understood that those degrees of separation are what makes the allegory work.
What you told me about him showing up to the table readings really raises my impression of the man. The fact that he cared so much as to shepherd his creation all the way through even the trial runs really speaks volumes to the end product that we see and just how well it stood up over time.
Yeah, it's one of those things. To go back to your point about remaking the Twilight Zone, I think it's kind of a fool's errand because it's like what you're essentially is remaking a title. And it's a lot better for you to just come up with your own anthology, and because it's not like Rod Serling came into this series with the intention of I'm going to write a 1960s sci-fi, fantasy anthology with dark themes. He didn't. He was like I'm going to write a sci-fi. He didn't intentionally put period parts into it. He just let the political and sociological and all of that flood into his writing. He let it be a voice of essentially a generation, if you want it to be.
It's interesting as well because
if you remake those stories, then you add specificity, and they don't feel as authentic, and that's part of the problem. Like when you mentioned that they changed it to to terrorists in the 2003, I was like, oh, let me guess, was it 2001 to 2000? Yeah, okay, yeah, of course it was.
Yeah.
Too specific, way too specific. And it's like, guess what? You can't remake Twilight Zone. What you do instead is you make Black Mirror. Or you make your own generational equivalent.
Yeah.
That's what you actually do, because that's way more reflective of what Rod Serling was trying to do with this series, where it's more about letting cultural osmosis inform what you're writing, rather than being like, I'm going to remake this period piece from 60 years ago and update it, because you end up dragging so much baggage into it, and you lose. You mentioned, I think in one of the previous things, like this is the pure dilute. This is the purest essence of 25 minutes of a story. And the instant you try and remake it, you lose that. You start contaminating it with your own stuff. You have to do your own thing. You cannot remake these. I do not feel like.
I
feel
think
like
the remakes weren't the remakes in the hour-long format also.
Yeah.
I think this sort of says to me, because as someone that never knew anything about the Twilight Zone, I think I'd watch an odd episode here or there, but kind of being introduced to it this way, I'm like, it shows you how much impact that a single creator with a single vision has. Like we talk about comparisons with Gene Roddenberry for better or worse, but Gene Roddenberry very much had this similar kind of thing, where his vision of TOS was influenced by his administration over it and as I say, for better or for worse. But in this case with the Twilight Zone, it all seems to be for the better. But having a singular vision, you talk about remaking them, with the remakes, I don't think you have that person. They look at the Twilight and go, oh, it's a spooky anthology show, there we go. But watching these episodes say to me, actually, no, it's a lot more than that. It feels more like we've got a single person steering the gear here to say, hey, here's all the spooky stories, but yeah, bullshit, Rod, there is a political overtones here. You're doing that Star Trek, analysis of humanity and the analysing, the differences in people and also how they react to things in a very good way, as I would say. Shall we go over to Bread, that's right, thank you, Mr. Cisco. What was your bread of the episode? Your bit that stood out to you, the bit that you couldn't quite stop thinking about in this episode? Let's start with Otto. What was your bread?
It's that kid. It sounds like a 50-year-old woman. And it's sort of, I hate that it detracts from the episode, but just like the high pitched voice and the way he pronounced certain words, I can't. It's so funny to me, which is a shame because like this episode is known for other areas, but yeah.
I'll go next. I think my bread was just generally the very quick turnaround, like the very quick from going from like, oh, there's something strange over there, to one kid going, oh, I think it's aliens, and everyone going, it's, no one just believing him and going mental. That was a very quick transition from like rational, lovely suburbia to intense, everyone hates everyone else. Don't know if that speaks more about me than anyone else, but there you are. Dan, go for it.
It was Pete Van Horn, but not the scene where he was executed by his neighbors. It was early on. Pete Van Horn is the only one seen doing anything productive. He's a woodworker. He's out in his front lawn creating something, we don't know what, just working at a saw. He's the only apparent member of the working class living in this suburban neighborhood, and the fact that he was the one chosen to be executed is also very telling of that. But just the image of the hammer hanging from his belt is my bread.
Stars.
For me, I was gonna go for that imagery of just like him walking down the street, but I'm actually gonna pick something different because I saw it, and guess what? I'm of the opinion that this isn't something that was required, but every time you do it sparingly, it's really, really effective. Blood. You do not see a lot of blood in sci-fi of this era. You do not see a lot of blood in comic books. So every time it happens, I notice it. So when good old Charlie gets hit on the head with that rock, and you see a ton of blood pouring off his head, I was like, okay, first blood has literally been has been spilled. This is rough, and just that sudden quick turnaround from this guy's the main instigator to suddenly he's the victim. And guess what? That's the entire thing in a microcosm. That's, if you want to distill this down into say like a minute and 30, you take that scene where they start stoning him out of nowhere, and then you take poor old Pete Van Horn getting shot, and guess what? That's all you really need. 30-second chunks. You could distill this down even further if you wanted to. And that's kind of like the essential parts. Like, that's my blood.
Blood.
Let's not mix the two, gentlemen. I happen to enjoy bread.
Sop it up.
All right, I want to shout out one of the actors who Dan already did, Claude Akins.
Yes. There's
this gentle giantness about him, this congeniality, which actually you mentioned Andy Griffith stars, and it reminds me of Andy Griffith. Big guy, affable, good head on his shoulders. He was, like you said, Pete was the only one who did anything productive, but Claude's character, who I just blanked on, is the only one that didn't try to mob mentality the hell out of everyone. He was the only voice of reason, really. While everyone
he's the one that Charlie has to steal the shotgun off of. He's I'm not going to let you use this. Yeah.
So good casting, I think, because he comes across as the neighborhood leader that you can throw in behind.
Yeah, I also had to give a shout out to the actor who played what's the name? Is it Les? The guy? No.
Les. Yeah, Les Goodman. Yeah,
Les Goodman. Because they did a really good job of picking this guy who looks ever so slightly off. Like, he doesn't look like he's a good-looking guy.
Large forehead, yes.
Yeah, but they intentionally go with a guy with a certain kind of brow who has a very certain way of acting and a certain voice, and it's like, guess who always gets picked out and isolated first? People who look ever so slightly off. Oh, he always looked weird. And guess what? He probably made his entire... like the name of that Star Trek actor who always plays Nazis whenever they do freaking period pieces.
Oh, yeah. J. Paul Bammer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, guess what? You have a certain face, you will always find work playing a particular kind of character. And I wouldn't be surprised if this actor has also done guys who are ever so slightly off. But I appreciate it because if you noticed his voice, every time he escalated in volume or he got a little bit more frenetic, there was a little bit more of a high-pitched tone to him. It's like, oh, is he effeminate? Is he weird? Is he strange? Is he some kind of alien? Is he some kind of weirdo? Is he some kind of... What's he been doing? Why is he looking up at the stars? It's like they do enough where it's like you yourself don't judge him for that, but there's enough that it's a little subtle undertone of this is who the mob picks out first. Anyone who looks even slightly different. And I also think, was he one of the few people who was light-haired? I think most of it was dark-haired people in the
Interesting.
Yeah, a couple of the wives were light-haired.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because I feel like I remember seeing a lot more dark-haired people in the, and I don't know, that kind of because he looks distinct from everyone else, which I feel is, guess what? That's good casting. You play to the physical characteristics without letting them determine fully what's going on.
There's also the undertone of Aryan versus,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
It's an age-old one. What did you guys think about like the overall mystery as it's developing? Because bearing in mind, probably watching this back in 1960 would have had a different mindset to us now, who have seen plenty of paranoid dramas and know that there is always like an ulterior motive here. It's never just people being the lynch mob. But kind of my thought was, I was trying to work out the mystery. I was thinking like, there's probably something controlling these people. Aren't just going like, oh, we're the monsters. Like, part of my brain was thinking maybe the moral point would be, oh no, we realise we're the monsters after all. But I didn't think. What were your guys' thoughts on that kind of process?
I was waiting for it to be something in the water, or for them to have been like be pulled out of their dimension, and that was the reason why Pete Van Horn hadn't come back. Was that like their little slice of like Earth had literally been taken out, and like they were somewhere else somehow, and like that would have been a nice little reveal. But like, that's an easy last 5 minutes for you if you want it.
Yeah, we're getting into the last 5 minutes territory here.
Save it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go with it. Let's go.
Well, if that's the best they could do, this should last about 5 minutes.
5 minutes. We will retrace our steps and figure out what's going on.
You've got 5 minutes. Do it.
Do it. Last 5 minutes, gentlemen. Dan, what have you got for us?
I appreciate where this film went in the last 5 minutes. I think that the only real place I could go that would bring it further was so Pete Van Horn goes over to Floral Street. I would like to see him live, and I would like to see his last words be talking about, they're ripping themselves apart over there. Don't do what they're doing, and to let the neighborhood get a little bit of advance warning of what's being done by the aliens systematically. And then, we could still cut to the aliens and finish things as they were, but I'd like to see a little bit more exposition there.
I think my last 5 minutes would be like, it would pan out, and like the shot would pan out at the end, like it did, but you actually find out that like rather than a couple of aliens, sort of sitting there and tweaking the buttons and going, haha, let's see what they're doing to themselves, it's actually like a dome, Truman Show style, and then they wake up the next day and everything's back to normal, they're all being friendly, but then something different, and it's all like a social experiment to see what triggers different societies, but their minds wiped every night. I would have thought that was quite a cool little Truman Show-esque kind of almost Matrix style kind of twist to it.
That's a decent one. I would go with super basic bitch answer, and I would have it be that Pete Van Horn doesn't die.
Man, we love some Pete Van Horn here. This is the Pete Van Horn fan club.
Justice for Pete Van Horn. Justice.
Like a number 2 to Rod
the
Serling.
voice of a common man taken from us too soon. He doesn't come back, and then something else incites them all to violence. Guess what? It could have been anything. They all kill each other. You get a slow pan out, and then all the lights come on in all the houses. You get a police car pull up. Pete Van Horn steps out the back with police officers, and let's go. What's the power outage? Literally, that's all it was.
Yeah.
You guys didn't even. You guys didn't even think to go out and check. No, that's the thing. Like, they go to full violence just like they do in the standard one. But afterwards, you get an epilogue of they just come back in, and it was just a power outage. That was all it was. Some kind of weird freak electromagnetic anomaly, and maybe the kid survives, and they get to dwell on the guilt of the fact that you were fucking right in there and for me. Oh, it's aliens. Oh, it's imposters. And then maybe that's Tommy gets to eat shit because he fucking got everyone he loved killed. Little fucker. Yeah, no, I think that'd be a decent little thing of just like you managed to tear yourselves apart over nothing. I feel like that's almost more nihilistic and cruel than it actually just being aliens.
Order. Last 5
All
minutes.
right, I've got 2 last fives for you. One of them I'm gonna steal ruthlessly from Dan, who came close to it, but he gave me a good idea, and it's gonna be another Pete Van Horn one.
Right on.
Yeah.
Hammer down, man.
Hammer it home.
Oh, they really put the nail in it.
Pete's off to Floral Street to get another shirt for Charlie, and they all start tearing each other apart. And he comes walking back slowly, and then they do a pan. He sees before him what has happened: bodies strewn everywhere, bloody mess, guns on and they all tore themselves apart in the time it took him to go to the next street and come over. So I like that one. The other one I'm going to steal from the master. The book Stories from the Twilight Zone, written by Rod Serling, gives us more background of the story of the episode and its characters. There's a short epilogue revealing that by morning, all the residents of Maple Street have brutally killed one another, and within a week of the massacre, the aliens have moved into the neighborhood in their place. God, I love the mind of Rod. I'm fanboying him over him lately. So yeah, that's the thing that they do the aliens, and then they're walking and talking, and as they pan, you show them like stepping over the bodies of these murdered people and just walk into their homes, turn on the light, and close the door behind them, and that's one alien or one monster's replaced another.
Oh, that's great. Pushing a little alien baby carriage around the corpses.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
The police officer comes up to the baby and goes, the police officer comes up to the baby, aren't you cute? Yes, I am very cute. Mother, I need nourishment. All right, this brings us nicely along to our ratings.
I can show you my rating code.
Schiller rating 3.5. Associational rating norm -3.
That's much too low a rating.
I'm just not accustomed to seeing an unsatisfactory rating on a member of my crew.
Oh yeah, I talk. Right, who is Dan? Fix it in post. Dan, what is our rating criteria for this episode?
So, gentlemen, for the monsters on Maple Street, how many wild-mannered, self-destructing suburban citizens out of 10 do you rate?
I generally thought you were going to go for that.
Pete Van Horns.
Yeah, no, I thought you were going to go for the guy's Hawaiian T-shirt that we couldn't quite make out what was on it.
It's good too.
I'll start. I think I enjoyed this episode, but I feel like it rushed the plot. I feel like this is definitely one of the shows that is, you say some people like, oh, they made a 10-episode TV show out of like 3 hours plot, and I feel like, yeah, this requires maybe a bit more time to get into the minds of all the different people. And you could spin a good drama over a season for like how these different families interact and how they get so suspicious of each other. But I felt like it felt rushed, but it kind of had to be rushed because again, you had a 20-minute plot to kind of get everyone really paranoid and suspicious over it, and who better to do that than a 10-year-old child? But yeah, so I'm going to give this a 6.5. I'm going to go just below my original pre-rating because I feel the end plot as well, just the aliens controlling, going, haha, look at humanity, aren't they so dumb? Felt a little bit off for me as well. It was good, I enjoyed it, but I don't know, I find a weird disconnect between people who just go insane at a drop of a hat, which is probably more likely. I'm an optimist, so it's probably more likely than I realise, but I like to think that maybe some people would be a little bit more rational than just believing everything someone tells them on TV. Oh, wait a minute.
Clearly, well spoken as an Englishman, yes.
Yes, exactly. Go on, Dan, what are you giving this?
Fantastic. So there's so many things that Serling is commenting on here. The death of the working class, gentrification, and just plain old stereotypes. Man, this reminded me of the time that I joined one of my old neighborhood's Facebook groups, and all the same stuff unfolded in real time. Just so nail on the head and so prescient. So this is just so relatable too. Yeah, I mean, Claude Akins is the everyman, just playing the mediator.
So
just
relatable. I remember when I got caught in a massacre like this.
So yeah, I'm gonna raise from a 7 up to an 8.5 wild-mannered, self-destructing suburban citizens out of 10.
Nice. I'm probably going to revise slightly down to 7 wild, self-destructed, wild abandoning neighborhoods out of 10. I had to kind of agree with Idle. While this is like very much a 25-minute get through it and just like let the tide of insanity kind of grow over you, I feel like a bit more time just exploring the specificity of all these prejudices would be really well spent, and just like unpicking. I don't know. I just feel like that there is a degree to which it goes, and then it just suddenly escalates really hard. And obviously, that is the nature of mob violence. All it takes is one thing, but at the same time, I don't know. Again, maybe it is that optimist to me, but it's like I feel like there would need to be one or two more inciting things. I like to think that people would pull back after a sudden rush of violence and think again, and then they would need more encouragement. I feel like it's kind of like my criticism of that.
We are so optimistic, aren't we? We can tell you we've lived a sheltered life. Good old
well,
first
that's
world
what happens. You
countries.
don't live in a country with a ton of fucking firearms on every street. I guess what the British version of this would play out with like a cricket bat, probably. All the performances were rock solid, but yeah.
Shout out to Tommy at the beginning of the episode who had a baseball bat. We thought the ice cream man was going to get it because he wouldn't give him his ice cream.
The guys, everyone just reacting to. We completely
What happened
skimmed
to
over.
the ice cream man?
Yeah. But everyone's sort
Where
of
did
like
he
just staring at this thing that came overhead, and the guy's just spraying us water up into the air. It's like, oh. We completely skimmed over that. Go on, Otto.
I'm disappointed in you two for not couching a rating with a wild-mannered, self-destructive suburban
yeah,
citizens.
sorry.
Thank you, Dan.
I did.
Thank you, Dan.
I did.
I didn't.
All right,
I'm the monster on Maple Street, apparently.
So I pre-rated this 6 rods out of 10. I don't really love it. I don't find it an enjoyable watch. But I think what we talked about recently in some of the other episodes, that's what good sci-fi makes you. It opens the conversation, and I think this does it as well as any episode. And maybe it is a country thing because we can't go a single weekend without a mass shooting here.
Yeah.
I currently live in a suburbia that I could absolutely believe it would ramp up that fast, even though on TV it seems unrealistic. I kind of am living it right now. It's like Lance outside. So
There's an ice cream man. Careful now.
I gotta be true to myself and how much I enjoyed it, but I'm gonna give it as much credit as I possibly can, which is 7.9 mild-mannered, self-destructive suburban citizens. I think it's a quality show, quality sci-fi, gives a good message. Rod's epilogue is up there with. There's some other epilogues where you just like that could be the whole episode and it would hit. So I liked it.
You liked it.
It's good.
You
It's a
enjoyed
good
it.
show. Well done, Rod.
Thank you, Rod.
Look at him. He loves it.
He really likes it. Okay, that takes this episode to a 7.5 between the lot of us. Not quite as good as To Serve Man, but better than The Hitchhiker. And
Hitchhiker's going to sit down there for a while, I think.
It's going to sit there. It's not quite Code of Honor, but it's something. Anyway, thank you all for watching. This has been the Holodeck. We'll be back. Otto, what are we watching next?
I'm scrolling down. Eye of the Beholders, Season 2, Episode 6.
Fantastic. So join us next week for another fantastic episode of The Twilight Zone. Until everyone, stay paranoid.